What's up, guys? Welcome back to the first Top 25 Sports Podcast. We're going to be talking college sports, mostly college football, but we'll venture into college basketball, and we will also talk about some pro sports and other sports just to mix it up and add some different things to the podcast every once in a while. Welcome, Jackson. First podcast. What are we thinking? How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm really happy. I'm really ready to do this. All right. How are you feeling today about this?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm ready to get right into it with the college football playoff rankings, if you're ready.
All right. Yep. As you all know, the college football playoff rankings came out last night. There are some interesting things, some snubs, and me and Zach have come up with our own list. But right now, I'll give you the current top 10. You got number one Alabama, you got number two Notre Dame, you got number three Clemson, number four Ohio State, number five Texas A&M. Iowa State at number six, Florida at number seven, Georgia at eight, Cincinnati at nine, Oklahoma at 10, with Indiana and Coastal looking right into the top 10. All right, so what are your takes on this? Do you think anybody shouldn't be there? Anybody moved up too much? Or anybody should be in the top 10 that isn't?
So, a couple things here. We'll kick it off with Iowa State. How is Iowa State number 6? How are they the best team after Texas A&M? I I don't understand how Iowa State is better than Cincinnati. I don't understand how they're better than Indiana, Coastal. I just don't. What do you think? I just don't think they should be there. I think it should be Cincinnati at
Yeah,
6. What do you think?
I don't understand it either. Like Ohio, Iowa State, they're not even favored in the Big 12 title game against Oklahoma. Oklahoma's the favorite, yet Iowa State is ranked number six. I do not get it. I don't understand it. I do not think they should be there.
All right, next thing, Florida at 7, coming off a big loss at LSU. I don't think this one is as crazy because obviously the end of that game was influenced heavily by one idiotic move by a Florida player. But I do think that Cincinnati can still move up to this 7th spot as well as Georgia. I think Georgia's a better team than Florida um, at the moment, resume wise. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, right, yeah. I kind of like this. I don't really have a huge opinion on it. I do think Florida should be ranked lower though because you just came you just came off a loss. You have two losses. You should not still be in playoff contention, as is Iowa State should not still be in playoff contention with their two losses.
All right. Next thing, we've got Georgia at 8. I don't hate Georgia at 8. There might be some people that think Cincinnati should jump them, but in my opinion, I do think Cincinnati should jump them, but but Florida should go behind Georgia. So, I think
Yeah,
Georgia should stay where they're at. I think they're in a good spot. I just think other teams need to move around. Um but Cincinnati at 9, giant snub in my opinion. They're 8-0. I think they have one or two ranked wins. If they don't have two, this will be their second. They've been blown the doors off people. Their offense has been really good. Their defense has been at least good enough. And I think that's a huge snub to put them at 9. What do you think?
yeah, I know. They should not be behind Florida, in my opinion. I think Cincinnati's the more complete team, and although Florida was ranked sixth, Florida has two losses. They should not be ahead of Cincinnati in terms of the playoff rankings right now. A loss is a loss, and Florida has two of them.
Yeah. Last thing we'll round this segment out with is Coastal Carolina at 12. I don't think this is the biggest deal, but personally, I like the Cinderella story, They're 11 and 0. They've been playing their minds out. They're like I think they're 8 or 9 in the AP poll, which is I think where they should be. I think they are a better team than Oklahoma, and I think they are probably resume-wise a better team than Florida. They might not be able to beat them head to head, but at 11 and 0 with a win over a good BYU team, I can't see why they're not top 10. What do you think?
Yeah, they're a very good team. They've been blowing the doors off of the Sun Belt teams. Like, take a look at some of these scores. All right. Here we go. We got 38-23 Kansas, 43-21 against Campbell, 52-23 at Arkansas, 30-27 at a ranked Louisiana Lafayette, 28-14 against Georgia Southern, 51-0 against Georgia State. They've been blowing the doors off of these Sun Belt teams. I think they're a really good team. They're playing like a Power 5 conference team right now.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. So piggybacking off of that, let's move on to our predictions for these games. One game that everybody's looking at, giant playoff implications. Clemson Notre Dame. Clemson obviously needs to win this game to stay in the playoff. I think Notre Dame should be in either way, but obviously Clemson, huge team, huge player base, huge fan base. They're knocked out of the playoff. That's a crazy thing for college football because they've been in it for the last, handful of years. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, they've won.
They've won two of
They've
the
won a lot of
last.
titles. They've been in a lot of titles.
I
Yeah,
think.
it would have huge implications on the playoffs if Clemson managed to lose this game.
Yep. So what's your pick here? What do you think's gonna happen? What do you think's gonna go down?
All right. Yeah. Uh, I got Notre Dame by 3 right now. I think Clemson, even with Trevor Lawrence and their offense complete, I think Notre Dame is the better team. Clemson's defense has been good. It hasn't been great. It hasn't been lights out. Like they gave up a lot of points to a Boston College team that has a very not great offense. So yeah, I'll take Notre Dame. Here it's going to be a shootout, but I think Notre Dame will come out on top and Clemson will not be in the playoffs.
I think Clemson drops out of the playoffs here as well. With Notre Dame's D line, how their defense has been playing, the last time they played, they shut down Clemson's run game. There was nothing that Clemson could do to get their run game going. And even with their backup quarterback coming in and putting up almost 400 yards passing, they couldn't do anything. I think Notre Dame's going to shut down the run. They're going to pressure and sack Lawrence. But I do think that Clemson, to give Clemson a little bit of credit, their defense was beat up last time, so this will definitely be an interesting game to see what ends up happening with this.
Yeah, I know, but I think Notre Dame won that last game fair and square.
Yeah.
You can't call out Clemson for not having Trevor Lawrence. The backup played phenomenal, yet Clemson still lost that game.
Yeah, I do think that to give Clemson some credit, their defense was also beat up, but those kind of even with that, they let Notre Dame score 56 points. I think they scored 56, right around there. And Notre Dame just shut them down. Well, sorry, they didn't shut them down offensively, but they shut down the run. And I think the defense for Notre Dame will get after it. And I think Notre Dame's not going to be able to keep up offensively, with their offense getting shut down with no run game, because obviously Etienne's a big part of that offense. He switches it up. He makes a lot of different things happen. Yeah, let's move on to Louisiana and Cincinnati. I'll let you lead us off here. Start us up
No,
for this one.
That's Tulsa, Cincinnati, actually. But
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
you
Yes.
you it has playoff implications for Cincinnati. This is well, Cincinnati wants to stay in the playoff race. They need to win this game, and if they want to move into the, let's say, top 6 and replace Iowa State or Oklahoma, they need to win by a lot. So I say Cincinnati. Yeah, they come in motivated. They haven't played in a while. They're rested. They come in, win by 3 touchdowns, 21 points.
Yeah, I think well rested. Obviously, you made a bunch of good points there with their determination to win this game will play a big role. How much they want this playoff and how much they're willing to give to get into this playoff. I think it'll come down to Cincinnati's defense. Their offense obviously can score. We've seen it all year. But I do think Cincinnati's going to control the first half. They'll probably end up with their second stringers in the fourth quarter, and I think Tulsa will score a couple touchdowns with second stringers in for Cincinnati, but I do think the game will be controlled by Cincinnati, and Cincinnati will probably win by upwards of 3 scores.
Yeah, I really like Luke Fickle, the Cincinnati coach. He's a really good coach. I could see him coaching at a big school like Michigan or something next year, don't you think?
Yeah, I do think Luke Fickle's a great coach, and he could definitely move on to a bigger job. Although, obviously, as Cincinnati improves, they could bring in some better recruits and be a decent football program. Obviously, they're not a bad football program, but they haven't been a contender for the playoff or the championship in recent memory.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's move on to the next game. Got number one Alabama versus Florida. What do you think about this?
Um, I think Florida. I think okay. Mac Jones is a Heisman candidate. Their backup wide receiver comes in. He's a Heisman candidate. Devonta Smith. And then obviously Harris at running back. He's really dynamic. They're gonna switch everything up, and they're gonna win this game. But I think it's gonna be closer than everybody thinks. I think this is a 2-score game. Very, very much a hot take. I don't think Florida gets the doors blown off of them. They're gonna be motivated. They just lost, coming off a loss to LSU. Everybody's doubting them. They're basically out of the playoffs unless they win this game. And I just think they're going to be so motivated. I think they'll keep the game close enough to be interesting, but I do think Alabama will win either way.
Yeah, that's basically the same thing I was going to say because, like, Florida, they're motivated. They just came off a really stupid loss to LSU that really shouldn't have happened. Florida should have won that game. Florida's a good team. I say they lose by 2 or 3 scores. They keep it close in the first half when Alabama just opens up the gates in the second half and the game suddenly isn't that close anymore.
So, moving on from that, another game that can impact not necessarily the playoffs, but the bowl season is this Cinderella Coastal Carolina team playing another Cinderella team. Not necessarily that much of a Cinderella story, but definitely a team that's surprising to see in the rankings and doing well. Like they have this year. Obviously, it's Louisiana and Coastal Carolina. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say that's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be close. It's going to be close in the let's say first through maybe midway fourth, and then one team's gonna get an edge, and they're gonna win by let's say 10 points here. It's
Yeah,
a
I'm thinking it's
Sun Belt matchup.
upwards of a 3-score
Coastal
game.
Carolina's been killing everybody. They're incredible.
Yeah, I don't agree with you there. I think this game is going to be Coastal Carolina dominated. I think their defense is going to surprise everybody. Coastal Carolina's hot. They're ready to go. They're roaring to go. They want this bowl game. They've never been a great football team. Um, they're relatively new to FBS Division 1A football, and they're coming out here. They're dominating the Sun Belt, and they're proving themselves as a team that could be a contender in the future if they continue this kind of streak.
Yeah, it's a great Cinderella story. I think it's gonna come to an end after this season, though. I don't see Coastal Carolina being super relevant in the future.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's a really nice story. I think
I would love
Coastal
to
Carolina is
see.
gonna win this game.
I would love to see them continue to be good, but every couple of years there's a team in college football that comes up from basically no playoff history, no real bowl history, and kind of shows up and starts winning games. But I think it'll most likely the chances are it'll die next year. But I would really love to see them keep going because we really need another contender in college football.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. And moving on to our final game that we're taking picks for, we got actually no, the second to last game we're taking picks for. We got Ohio State versus Northwestern, the Big Ten title game.
This one's
What's your take
obvious.
on this?
This one's obvious. I mean, I think ESPN has this as like a 90% Ohio State win chance right now. Um, Justin Fields has been
Or excuse me, third last game we're reviewing. I got messed up there.
All right, yeah, but obviously big playoff implications for Ohio State. But not obviously. Ohio State's been dominating. Justin Fields has been amazing. Um, their wide receivers have been phenomenal. They can catch the ball. The two questions I have is I think they'll win this game either way, but to be a believer in Ohio State for the playoffs, I have to see their run game and their defense get going against Northwestern because thus far this year, there have been a lot of times where their defense and their run game is scarily bad.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I believe Ohio State for them to maybe move ahead of Clemson this week, even for them to move ahead of Clemson, they need to establish the run game. Master Teague, Trey Sermon, they've been good. They haven't been great. They've been putting up good numbers, but yeah, they haven't had a ton of absolutely stunning games. They established the run. I think they'll be fine.
Yep. All right. What let's go ahead. Let's go with our bowl predictions. I'll let you lead off. Why don't you go ahead with your
Actually,
all
no,
of yours
no,
and you go
we
ahead.
we we have a few more games to review actually.
Oh yes, we do have a couple more. Sorry. Let's move on to
All right,
those.
yeah. All right. All right. Friday's game, Oregon versus USC, the Pac-12 title
USC
game.
Pac-12
What do
championship
you
on a Friday. Obviously
Yes,
interesting for the
sir.
Pac-12 to schedule like this. Um, not something that's common to ever see big games on Friday nights. Obviously, a handful of conferences play Friday night games to fill in the TV time more. But anyway, moving on from that, I think USC is not as good of a team as everybody says. They almost lost to Arizona and or Arizona State. They've had some close calls.
N-
They held on. Slovis has been decent. Um, Shao for Oregon obviously has been all right. Obviously, they lost to Oregon State. Coming off loss to Oregon State, but I don't like. I think USC wins this game, but I think it's a shootout, and I think it's both teams in the 30s and 40s, one score game, shootout, maybe even overtimes. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. USC is a fun team to they're a fun team to watch. They've been keeping it close, but yeah, I agree with you. I do not think they're as good of a team as everybody makes them out to be. Uh, I think they're gonna win this game, but I do definitely not think they will make the playoffs even if they win this game.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to our last game, we got Oklahoma and Iowa State.
Yep,
I
Big 12
think
title game.
Big 12 title game this weekend. Oklahoma heated up. They've won six straight. Rattler's been looking better, obviously. In their first two games, he was throwing picks and they were getting crushed. They've resurged back into the top of the polls. I think Oklahoma wins this game nearing 70 points. I think this game goes to two or three overtimes, like we usually see with the Big 12 games, big high ranked Big 12
Yeah,
games, because they just score, score,
yeah, the
score.
Big 12 where defense doesn't exist.
Yep, yep. What do you think about this game? I just think it's gonna be high scoring shootout with a lot of points and a lot of overtimes.
You know what? Call me somebody who just goes by the odds, but I think it'll be pretty close with what the current odds are at. Oklahoma winning by 3. I say slightly different than that. Oklahoma wins by a touchdown, but yeah, I say Oklahoma wins this. I do not think Iowa State deserves to be the 6th team right now.
All right, let's kick it off with the bowl games here. We're gonna go through the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl. That's what we're gonna do. Um, so let's start. Let's kick it off. Just kick it off with the Fiesta Bowl, obviously in Arizona. That'll be on January 2nd. Who do you think those teams will be? Obviously, the committee for those or the invitations for those usually rely somewhat on team team popularity because they want to make their money off their monetization with their TV. Obviously, they're broadcasting, but like I think this game will be Georgia Indiana. I think both those teams are good teams. Georgia obviously a large market team, and Indiana not necessarily a large market team, but in a large market conference. But I think those teams both go. I don't like. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, that was actually my prediction as well. Yeah, small world. They're both very good football teams. Indiana's been showing everybody that they can play with the big dogs, and Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs, they're obviously a big dog. They're good. They're gonna they're gonna come out into this game. I think it's gonna be Georgia versus Indiana. Fiesta Bowl.
All right, so we got the Peach Bowl here. I think this game. I think this game teeters on whether or not. I think all the bowl games teeter on whether or not Clemson makes it to the playoffs. Because if Clemson doesn't make it to the playoffs, they're going to a bowl game. They're going to a New Year's Six bowl game. There's no debate. They are the biggest moneymaker in college football. They're going to a bowl game if they don't make it to the college football playoff. So I think if Clemson loses, this every bowl game prediction this year will be wrong if Clemson loses. But
Yeah.
obviously, I predicted Notre Dame winning. I think if Clemson pulls that game out, this is Iowa State and Texas A&M. But if Clemson stays if Clemson drops out, this game is Clemson, and this game is if Iowa State beats Oklahoma, like I predicted, the playoff will be Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Iowa State. But if Clemson wins, this game is Texas A&M and it's Iowa State. If Clemson loses, this is Iowa State and Clemson.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take on it. My pick for this was Iowa State and Cincinnati. I think Iowa State's going to get beaten, but Iowa State, they're in the Big 12 title game. They're an interesting team. I do not think Cincinnati's going to make the playoffs, even with a win at Tulsa. It's
Yeah.
going to be two good teams in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, all right, so moving on to the Cotton Bowl here in Texas. I went with the two Cinderella teams this year, man. I had to go with Coastal Carolina and Cincinnati. Two really good football teams, both Cinderella stories, both undefeated as of right now, before the conference championships for both of them. What do you think for this game? What do you think the matchup looks like?
We're on the Cotton Bowl, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I have Coastal Carolina in that game too, but here's an interesting take. If Clemson doesn't make the bowl, doesn't make the playoffs, I got Coastal Carolina versus Clemson, one of the top teams in the NCAA versus a Cinderella story. The TV ratings would be off the charts.
I
Even though it might not be a close game, I think that it would be a good game to watch on TV. Very good story, and yeah, that's my prediction for the Cotton Bowl.
I do think that's a great story. Obviously you have Clemson losing, so you think Clemson's in that game. But riding on that game is obviously the college football playoff. So let's give our playoff predictions. Let's just go straight to that from there. Um, give me your four teams. Tell me the four, and then I want you to seed them one at a time. I want you to tell me which teams you have, and then I want you to tell me the matchups.
All right, I got Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas A&M. It's pretty generic, but I think it's good. What's gonna happen? It's most likely.
Yeah. So, what is your 1 versus 4 matchup? What do you think there?
I think that would be Alabama versus Texas A&M, a good old SEC matchup right there. I do not think Ohio State's going to be ranked fourth. Texas A&M would be filling in for Clemson, and yeah, I do not think that they would move them ahead of Ohio State, even
I do agree
if
that
Ohio State wins the Big Ten title. What?
if Clemson drops out, I do think Ohio State goes to 3. I also have those same four teams, but I have Alabama sorry, no, I have Notre Dame at 1, Texas A&M at 4. If Notre Dame beats Clemson twice, they're the number 1 team in the country. They are the number 1 team in the country. So
Oh,
I
that's gonna
have Notre Dame versus Texas A&M, and then I have Ohio State, Alabama, and not only do I think Notre Dame's the number 1 team if they win, I think that they will schedule it like this to get their TV money. I know, it's a classic thing to say, get their TV money, because then you have a chance at another SEC versus SEC national title game, and I just think that's big for the media, and they'll eat that up.
yeah. I
Yep.
kind of agree with that. I do not think Notre Dame is the best team in the country. I think that Alabama is in the SEC. And this might just be SEC bias, but SEC is the strongest conference in NCAA right now. I
I
think
I have to agree, but
Alabama's just
Alabama
been,
hasn't beaten Clemson twice. Alabama hasn't beaten
yeah, I
Clemson
know.
twice. That's
Alabama's been just crushing it though. Like
yeah.
they're gonna beat Florida. They're gonna beat another ranked team. The SEC is good, but Alabama's better. I got Alabama at number 1.
Yep. All right. Who do you have in your national championship?
My national championship game. Oh boy. Although although I love Ohio State, I think Notre Dame might be the better team here, especially if they beat Clemson again. Uh, I'll take Notre Dame and Alabama, with Alabama blowing them out and Alabama being the national champion.
Yeah, so mine's a little bit more interesting. Ohio State looked good, but I do have to pick against them here, even though I'm a giant fan of them. Obviously, both of us are huge fans of Ohio State. I do have to pick against them here. I think we're gonna end up with, I actually think we're gonna end up with Alabama, Texas A&M, and I don't. I want to make a hot take and say Alabama loses, but I'm not gonna say it because if I say it and I sound like an idiot, it's forever. I have to always remember that I predicted that Texas A&M would beat Alabama in the national championship. But I'm gonna say it anyway. Texas A&M wins the national title this year. Boom, done. That's my
Hey, you
prediction.
said it. There's no going back on it. Let's
Yep.
do this.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, with the national champions, you have who? Alabama.
Yep, I got Alabama.
Jackson's prediction is Alabama. My prediction is Texas A&M. With that, that's going to wrap up our first podcast episode. Hopefully, you guys come around for the next one. We will be uploading weekly podcast episodes on Top 25 Sports. We might also add some extra commentary videos in there as well, just with some general stories about maybe the history of college football or the future of college football, just depending on what seems to be going on in the moment. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching this first episode of this podcast, and I hope you see you guys next time.